So if you haven't already bookmarked our ecom website at www.cu.edu/ecom, I would highly encourage it. But of course, for today's training, we'll just go ahead and hop into the login section, and that's far right of the navigation. Get to that login. So of course, we have our other applications here, but we'll just go ahead and hop into Cvent. Alrighty, so that first piece, once you've logged in, I'm seeing nothing on chat, so I assume you all got in successfully. This is the overview page for Cvent. So one of the first things you might notice, you may or may not have events already in there. I, in my role, have access to every event that's ever launched, so it should not be as cluttered as my screen is. But again, this is very much the only events you should see are ones that you have created or that have specifically been shared with you. So if you're seeing all events, please let me know and we would want to get rid of that for you. No need for that. And so one thing I will want you to check is up at the top, you should see your university email address. If you're seeing something that's somebody else's or whatever, please let us know. That would be a red flag. Over here. So up in the top right, the first thing that I'm going to show you is that help and support from Cvent. And so that's going to be found next to your name, and we got that help and support. And let's go ahead and click in there. And so I'll just go ahead and do it. Well, one, you can see on this first part, we'll look at searching for just an existing tutorial in a second. But this, if you needed to reach out to someone in help and support who works with Cvent, you can absolutely come here and either open a case, chat with them, request a phone call, so you don't even have to sit on the line, but they will call you quickly. And you can also just give general feedback. But my suggestion is always to start with the existing tutorial. So say I was interested in setting up sessions for an event, I would literally just come here and start poking around on a tutorial before I really try doing it. And so, of course, works very similar to Google. You're going to find just those top articles. And creating sessions, that's my example here. And so these tutorials are absolutely amazing. I cannot say enough positive things about Cvent that will really walk you through everything. But if you want to give them a call, that's an option too. And so they actually trained me very well to search in this knowledge base and use it because we can see my cases in the top right. And so these are going to be specific to me, but if you ever open one, you'll see yours. I think I have the most cases of anybody at CU, which is not embarrassing. We're asking lots of questions. But where they were training me is when I would ask a question, let's see, on waitlist. One, I can see what I asked. The subject was waitlist, the description, I wrote out my question, but they've also tracked this entire back and forth conversation. It ended up in my inbox, but long-term, I can come back and view these things. And I think even better than that, they point you to existing articles that are going to help you. And so that's when I started realizing, you know what, I could probably just search this myself and find these articles rather than going to somebody at Cvent. So it really just comes down to what you're comfortable with. So I'll exit out of those many, many tabs. Alrighty. So we are going to go in and start creating our first event. And so to do so, we will use this green Create Event button. And so this is a pretty standard throughout Cvent. If you're ever trying to edit a page and it's not letting you, there's probably a big green button that you need to click first. So that's a commonality. But we'll just say Create Event. And so you can do a new event. I do not advise it. I think starting with a template is going to set you up for much better success. And again, that's just because this tool is so robust. There are so many boxes to check. We are the tip of the iceberg, and I'm going to keep blowing your mind throughout the training. So I've seen a lot of people start just a new event, and you have to do a lot of work to it. So leverage those templates, not reinvent the wheel. And so we're going to say using an event template. And then from there, in this little box, we have some ellipses, so we can search for a template to copy. And I just want you to go ahead and search for the current year being 2019. And you should just see one in there. It's called template-CU branded standard event. So like I said, we are building a standard event. And the other reason why it's so nice to use is because it is branded for CU. So hopefully that helps you as well. So let's just select it. And at this point, it has started to copy every single component from this template. And so now I can go through this wizard. It's going to take me page by page until my new event is configured. So I'll just scroll down a little bit. So the first part, I mentioned earlier, there's some emails in here that can send like a know before you go message right before the event. And so in order to make sure those don't accidentally go out, either with content you're not sure on, from a past event or on a date associated to a past event, you're safest to just keep the default set scheduled emails to be manually sent instead. So I keep that there. But then we can keep scrolling. So like I said, everything was copied. So that's the title included. But I'm going to go ahead and name this. Actually, with today's date, I'll put 2019, 06, 07, and then training. And I'll put test in there. Just so I can delete it later. Feel free to name yours whatever you want. Also, this category here, frankly, I wish I could delete it. It is a required field, but we are not doing any analysis on it. So just do your best picking the right one. It doesn't really matter. But mine's a training session. We also have, right, by default in this template, we're assuming most of you want that English language. But again, this is just one of the first parts to blow your mind. Cvent is an international tool. You could get any language in here. It just happened, our first event that was not English speaking was from the Boulder Chancellor's office in Tokyo. So there's a lot of possibilities here, and we often don't know them until, right, we need them. So that was a new one for me. You also have your event description here, and I think off the bat people think, oh, gross, there's code. I don't know coding. You don't have to. There is this HTML button below it that's going to open up just a WYSIWYG editor that should make it a lot easier for you to just type directly in here, even control formatting and stuff. I will not change this information. I will keep it populated though, just so we can see where it displays. Another little tip within Cvent, you might have noticed on this page, all these question marks. If you're not sure what this capacity is, you can hover that and it'll give you a little bit more detail. And so helpful here that it tells you after capacity is met, the event will automatically close for registration. So nice feature that you don't have to constantly monitor it and go close it the minute you hit your capacity. But I will leave mine blank for today. Next, we'll move on to the when information. So again, our default is in standard mountain time. We assume that's where most of our events are being hosted, but you could change that. And then you can also determine the registration deadline. And again, what is that for? The moment that date and time is met, the form will automatically close. You don't have to think about it. So I'll just go ahead and leave these as they are. And then of course your start and end date is the most beginning of your event and the end date being the most end of your event. So like today I had sessions sprinkled out in between. Now we're on our where information. So very straightforward here. We'll look at how this Cvent will automatically pull in this address. So I'm just going to go ahead and populate it with some dummy information just so we can see it populated. Let's do my office, 1800 Grant Street. I don't know why that's so populated, weird. All right. And as we continue to scroll, the next piece we see is Event Planner. Of course, this one's definitely required. So we had to put that dummy information in there, being first name and last name. But go ahead and put either your event planner or probably your name in there, which I'll go ahead and do. Sometimes I have had units like academic affairs, right? They want academic affairs as the event planner, not an actual person. So you can just, in that case, I put academic in the first name and affairs in the last name. Kind of manipulate it that way. But probably even more important than that is this email in this drop down here. And so this is the first component we have come across that I will mention your e-com specialist. You are not able to add emails here. Your e-com specialist will need to take a request from you, get it added, and then they will make sure you are the only one who can see it. So again, I see everything, but you should only be seeing one or two options or whatever you've requested. And so if your only option today is CU events do not reply, that is fine. Clearly, you'll have to keep it that way. I can't fix that for you now. But before you ever launch your first event, you absolutely need a real, your real event planner's email address in there. All righty. We got that event planner bit, and now we're on our custom event fields. And so this is one of the few areas that is very, very specific to e-com and CU. And I think a good indicator of that is that we say it's custom. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is because, right, I talked about Cvent help and support. They are so amazing. And if you need help setting up sessions, that's absolutely who I would go to. There are a few elements here when we deal with, which this is doing finances, integrating with CU data or finance systems. Cvent help and support isn't going to be able to help you there. So I know it's not quite black and white where you go for who at the moment. I think over time you'll get better clarity. But if you're not sure, you can always start with your e-com specialist, and they might advise you go to Cvent help and support. So, but yeah, when we're dealing with finances, your e-com specialist is definitely going to be the best one. Please do indicate your campus, whoever you are housed with. I know sometimes, right, we have like employee services in our building, and they might be hosting an event in Boulder. This should not be the location of your event. This is very much where you are housed. So that shouldn't really change. I will keep mine as system. And then these other pieces, selecting a payment path. This is how, if you have a paid event, and I'm going to leave ours as free right now for this test, and you do the same, we could collect money. And so from a high level, essentially how that happens, and you do not need to follow along with this one. I'm just going to show you an example. If it was a paid event, it would need to indicate that it's a CU Cvent. And what that does is forces some more required fields on here. So at this point, it's going to force you to pick a speed type. And so again, this is an area where if we don't have every speed type at CU, we only have the people who are hosting paid events. And so they have asked their e-com specialist to add their speed type here. And so I'm just going to pick one as an example. But essentially what this does, when we collect money through Cvent, all money, it doesn't matter what event it's for, comes through one IMA, or an Internet Merchant Account, which we have with Wells Fargo. Somebody in our treasury office in our building goes through, I think, every other week, and kind of item by item can see, okay, we got $15 in for this event, and this fee type is what they're using to say, okay, give that $15 back to Boulder Graduate School. So if this is set up incorrectly, it can mean money's going to the wrong place, which is a big, big deal. So we'll want to make sure that's correct. But for today, we will go ahead and leave it as a free event, which then lets us indicate no speed type required, no account code required. And so with all that good, we can hit next and get to step 2. So we set up those basic event details, and now we're looking at the event features. So this is really what we just covered. You have to do that for every event, right? Basic details. But this is where it starts getting interesting, that you can turn on or off these bells and whistles based off your custom event, and really just based off of how much you want to learn of Cvent. So one of those examples being, as I scroll down on this page, budget tracking. I never thought about tracking the budget for my events within the actual event in Cvent. Instead, I'm doing that in Excel files. You can absolutely do that within Cvent, but probably not your first event. That's something you might grow into. Same goes for like staff lists, right? So for this event, I didn't want to add a staff list, but if you wanted to really showcase people's faces so that when they come to your registration table, they know, who am I checking in with? You could do that. There's a lot of opportunities here. And so if it's something you're interested in having, when I say turn it on, that is as simple as just hitting this little checkbox, and now it's green and it is on. And I'll just go ahead and leave that one on for now, to kind of show you how this plays. But notice I don't have a lot checked here. And so we're really keeping that template pretty simple for you. You can do more if you want. And so the other kind of tip here is, again, you can hover these little eyes and get more information on what it does before you decide to turn it on or not. Right? If I know I need sessions, I got to turn it on. So I will go ahead and hit next here. As we move into these website and registration features, clearly we have a lot more turned on. And so by default, we have turned on your mobile website as well as mobile registration. And I'm actually a little surprised Cvent doesn't just do this by default. I can think of no good reason why you would not have a mobile website and mobile registration option. I think really you're just hindering people from registering for your events via their phone. So I will keep those on. We did turn on guest registration. We assume most people collect guests in their events, but if you don't, you could turn it off as well. Well, otherwise, I'll go ahead and kind of keep those as is, but if there's something specific you're interested in for your events, please turn them on, and once the event's configured, you'll see what that means a little bit. But I'll hit next and get to our step. Oh, it's still step 2. Again, I'm going to leave them pretty much the same. You don't have to have most of these on. Web links is one of the components you definitely need turned on. When we hover this, share links to your event. And so this is how we're actually embedding a link to our registration page in our Marketing Cloud emails. I can show you that later on. but web links absolutely needs to be on. Everything else, up to you. So with that piece done, I'm good to go ahead and hit finish on this page. My event will start configuring. And I'm taken to my event. So I can already start seeing here, right, what I named it. I can see that dummy location that I put in there, the date I associated to it. So one thing I think is underutilized here, and especially in these early phases when you don't know what you need to do to make sure your event's ready to go, is this event checklist in the middle of the screen here. And so depending on what you turned on or off, it's going to present different checklist items to you. And bear with me on this one a little bit. This was a difficult concept for me originally. So right here, I'm seeing create staff members and assign them roles. Well, how does it know that I need to do that? And so what it's driving that based off of, like I said, is what I turned on. I turned on staff members, so it knows I need to do that task. So right now we're on the overview tab, but how you're going to kind of make your way through this event in creating it is very much from left to right. I know this navigation is wildly daunting. I was skipping around a lot when I first started, but it's truly set up to kind of take you through the steps. And so when we look at event details, I'm actually going to click on under general, in that far left column, event information. Let's click there. So this we've already done, right? We've added all that when, where, event planner, things like that. We've got in those custom fields our finances. So if you have a change to this, maybe your event date changed, you could come back in here and fix it. And so we've looked at on this first tab, the first line, but now let's look at the second one being event configuration. Event details, event configuration. And so again, this is the area that we just did. We've already done this piece. But sometimes, right, people are like, oh, I didn't turn on budget tracking. Now I need budget tracking. It is not set in stone. You can absolutely go in here and edit this. And actually, I'm going to turn off my staff list. I'm going to turn on budget tracking and say save. And let's see what happens when I do that. Now, when I hover event details, I can click into budget. I can't click into staff. And so really highlighting here, if it's a feature you don't think you need, do not turn it on. And that's because it's going to make this very large navigation much easier, right? So I think at an initial glance, you think, oh my God, I have to do all of this. No, you didn't turn on staff. You didn't turn on tasks. You didn't turn on speakers. So you're essentially done with the event details already, unless you want to go play with that budget. And so the other thing that's playing there on the overview page is that checklist. Right before it said something related to staff, but now I've turned on budget, so I need to do these 3 things within my budget. So as I do that and hop into this budget, I can just check them off the list, which is really nice. And so that same kind of checklist resides on this left-hand side. So they will sync. So you don't have to go back to the overview page. So I will not dig into the budget, just wanted to show that example. But we are done with event information and we are done with event configuration. So we can already move on to this website and registration tab. And so this one absolutely does look much more full. There is more work to do here. But today I'm going to focus on a couple of these components that, again, you have to do for every event. And so first I'm going to click on website and registration, or hover it. And then in the far left column under website, let's click on event website. So to help me kind of explain what's going on here, or how it's driving it, one thing I like to do, in the top right corner, there is this preview option, which lets you see a real-time preview. And as you make changes, you can see it in that preview. So I'll just go ahead and click that. And right now, knowing that all of us use that same template, our emails or our events probably look really similar. And so one of the first things I'll notice is, well, that's the event name I put in there, right? It's automatically populating there. And this is also the description I've automatically added in there, as well as that when, the where information. So long as you fill out those first couple of pages, a lot of it's going to automatically populate. So similarly to that, for every event, you kind of need this summary page, just this overview. But earlier I said you could build out your event website to be either one page, being the summary, or it could be a lot more. And in this case, we're somewhere in between the two. There's an agenda page. So if you're adding sessions and you want the agenda listed out, that is something that would automatically happen on this page. You can show the attendees. So as people are registering for your event, they can display here. And right, depending on your event, you may or may not want that feature. We've also got a tab of directions, which I definitely see used on most events. Oh, throwing things. That is automatically pulling in that 1800 Grant Street address. So another visual element that I have had to do next to no work to get. And then, of course, finally, we have that Contact Us page. So it should be pulling in, and I kept mine as that CU events do not reply. I should have fixed that to my Melanie.Jones. I apologize. But all of that will automatically populate here as well. And so when we're looking at that on the back end, again, in website and registration, and then our event website, why are those 4 or 5 pages showing? So the summary page is up there at the top. It always has to be displayed, but then we chose to put the agenda after. But maybe that's something you do not want to display. You don't have sessions. Maybe you want to change the order of these pages. Maybe I do want to show my staff now that I have that turned on. Things like that. You can kind of play around with here. And so I move that order. Now I'll go back to my preview and just hit refresh. And I can already see the order of my pages changed. So that preview is really helpful to see just real-time changes. So we looked at the pages of the event website. Again, just what's listed out here. But what about the other design elements? And so that would be in your second tab, being your layout. And so there are a couple of different options on here for you to choose a different view. I'm not going to walk you through that. And honestly, I've done a couple of trainings, and every time people say, yeah, it doesn't look as good. And so I don't think it's worth showing you. We very much designed this in kind of the best way it's going to look. But what you can do, or what you probably want to do, right, looking at this, we have a very generic header here. And you probably either want to make that your specific department, or maybe you have a specific event logo that you want to add up there. And so you can control that here in the layout. And so it really is as simple in this customized area. It kind of plays like Marketing Cloud, where you click into that header, and we can use a custom header. Yes, we do want to do that. You can search for images. And so this media library is open to everybody. So what we would ask you to do is to create your own folder. And I'll go ahead and do that well, I don't have an image right now. I'll do that one in a minute. We would ask you create your own folder and save all of your assets in there. And you all will fully understand, look at all, right? We've got 150 users or so. So an attempt to try to keep that organized. And the other important thing to notice here, because of this page width, it's 790 pixels wide. Your image that you add should also be 790 pixels wide. Otherwise, you might have some weird spacing here or something. But otherwise, that will carry out throughout every page of your form. And very good question, Chrissy. So while we all started with this template, what we very much see is for this first event, you're going to make the branding your own. Maybe you're going to add sessions because you always have that. You probably host somewhat consistent events. After that, we can either save your particular template as a template for you to copy, but what most people do is just copy their own event after and kind of use that as a template. Oh, and of course, if you did add an image there, you would want to save it down here. But for the most part, I don't mess with much on this page. And then that third and final tab is your theme. And again, I don't necessarily advise you poke around here. I think there's a lot of other parts of the application to learn. And for the most part, right, this meets CU branding standards with our gold and our gray background and stuff. Where we started with a theme that's charcoal and white, it very much looked like that. But as we scroll down, you are able to control the colors that are driving it. So we kind of overrode some of those gray shades with our gold. And so I've had somebody before, I won't do this, goes ahead and say edit, and then they change their theme to something totally different. So, right, it would show up as green, they hit save, and then 5 minutes later, they think, oh, I want that CU branding back. The sad news is you would have to do a bit of manual work down here to add our gold and things like that. So that's why I tell you probably just don't mess with that area, but if you're interested, you could. I will not be saving that. Cancel. All righty. So within website and registration, we did go ahead and add this. We looked at the event website, and that's really all I'm going to go through on this column. And the next piece we'll look at is under registration settings, the top one. And before I actually show you these components, I think it helps to see the user interface to just really understand what you're controlling. And so what we've looked at so far, these pages are the event website. So it's controlled under this website column. But once we hit register, and you are now inputting first name, last name, email, which is standard for all events, you are now in the registration portion. And so I tripped up on this a lot where I was trying to change something here and I kept going to, oh, it's in the website. Like, no, you have started they've hit register, you're in the registration process. So registration settings, there's a lot going on here. And again, this is a big area where we've customized this to what we think is pretty standard for CU. But as you customize it, that would kind of be something baked into your particular template for you to continue to duplicate. So these basic settings, they seem awfully detailed if you ask me, but can a user or somebody registering for their event modify their own registration? We think yes. I don't want them calling me for it, so that's enabled. you could say at what date are they allowed to modify it towards. We didn't put a date in there, but you could. And if you wanted to, you're going to have to hit that green edit button. And you could pick something. Are they allowed to cancel their registration? We've enabled that, but maybe you want it up to a certain date. Of course, mobile-friendly registration should be enabled, as I said earlier. Invitation forwarding. So somebody else can promote this message for you. Again, I think, why not? The more the merrier. So there is a lot going on here. What about the wait list? Is it enabled or is it disabled? And so depending on how much room you have at your event, you may or may not need to do a wait list. You've got a lot there. But we will go ahead and look at our identification and security, the second tab on this page. And no, I did not want to save that. And this is an area I've seen people get tripped up with before, and I see why. So in our template, we have set this where registration is open to anyone in the public. And I know people think, oh, no, I'm only inviting my 20 people. So really this gets back to how it technically works, where you're embedding a web link, which I'll show you in a little bit, in your Marketing Cloud email. And so we're protecting that by way of you only sending your invitation to the people you invite. They are able to access the event. So we've had people click like, no, only the ones on my invitation list. That ain't going to work for you. You're going to send your email and people are going to call you and say, hey, I can't register for your event. So we need to make sure they are open to the public, anyone. And really that's the biggest piece there. There are some other privacy elements here. Like, do you want registrants displaying on that attendee page? Yes or no? We got some options there, but shouldn't have to mess with anything. I will go to the third tab, being our contact field. So when I'm looking at registering, why am I presented, or why do I need to input my first name, last name, and email? Well, one, those 3 fields are absolutely required for all of your events, but it's also just driven by what has been placed in the template. And so I will go ahead and say next. Let's see what next page I get. So it's not asking me any other information. What if you're thinking, well, I need to know what their address is or something like that? You can add fields here. We very much wanted to make this as simple as possible. It's generally a best practice that only ask questions that you're going to use. I see people add address all the time, and I ask them, what are you using that address for? And they say, I don't know. Well, one, we're in this very sensitive space of data where I know a lot of people don't like giving you additional information unless you're going to use it. Very much European Union GDPR laws. But also, it's going to serve as a barrier for somebody registering, right? If I'm required to fill out 50 fields versus filling out first name, last name, email, I might be more inclined to come to your event. So it really just depends on your audience, your event. There's a lot of components there. But I will, for an example, say add field, and it is broken down by some of this either personal information or contact information. But what if I say address? Yep, I want your home address. Great. And is it optional? Is it required? You do have different options there. And so when I say save, let's go ahead and look at this. I still got that preview open, and I'll just go ahead and refresh it, and I can see that home address in there. It's going to require it from me. All I got there. contact fields. All right, we are moving swiftly today. The next one we have our guests. And again, the Cvent is being smart because I turned on guests in my original configuration. I have a guest option here. If I didn't have guests turned on, this would not exist here. But do you want to control how many guests can be brought? I know sometimes Bruce has events where we really want to make sure you're only bringing one guest versus maybe a networking event where the more the merrier. You wouldn't even want a max on there. So you can control those things. Oh yeah, that's good too. As well, what information do you want to collect on guests? Do you just want that first name, last name, so that you can print their name badges? Or do you want their email so that you can communicate with them? You know, for the most, as we built it into the template, we did make that optional, not required. And that third one being the confirmation page. Again, not a lot you need to do here. And I'll show you on this side. Or, sorry, I should have done this a second ago. I will populate that address. But let's see how adding guest information works. I'll say add guest. And yep, so that's where we can see that first name is required, last name is required, but email address is not. I can just save. That's sending invitations to other people that we had turned on. Ooh, this one's good. Some registration questions as well. Perfect. So we have made it through in this website and registration through the registration settings. But what we just saw on the front end here are these registration questions. And so I'm navigating to that area here of website and registration registration questions. And so well, yes, accessibility is incredibly important. We very much wanted to bake these into your template just so you don't forget about it. And so the best way to approach this is to ask people as they're registering, do you or your guests require accommodations related to accessibility? And so this question is required. For the most part, people say no and just move on their way. But if they indicate yes, this kind of markup language displays. And so you will need to fix this in your template. And so I'll show you this in a second. But accommodation requests related to accessibility should be made a couple days before your event to whoever your campus ADA expert is. And so I am very excited about the fact that you don't have to be an accessibility expert. You are doing a lot of the job by asking or giving people an opportunity to tell you they need accessibility accommodations. And making sure it's done in a timely fashion. And so because you're asking this, you're actually able to report on it. And so you can follow up with your internal ADA expert and say, hey, did Susie, who indicated she has accommodations related to accessibility, reach out to you? And if they say no, that might be a time for you to try to connect those two people. And really just the thought of, let's know about it on the front end so that we can plan for it rather than learning about it at the event and not being able to solve it. And so I'm going to actually hop out of here a little bit and go to our wiki, our little help here. And I'm just going to type in accessibility. And so we did a deep dive on this a while ago. I would absolutely encourage you to look at this. It does pertain to Marketing Cloud as well as Cvent. But considering accessibility, but this particular point being who is your ADA expert. So one, we can look at those different accessibility is a lot of things in that digital space. But we're looking at our event registration. and those registration questions. So your experts are listed out here. Yeah. So if somebody reaches out and needs captioning, maybe they need an ASL signer. Those are all things that fall into their world. Your job is giving them the opportunity to ask for that help. And of course, you're welcome to add other questions in this registration section. So, right, maybe you're asking, I can just drag it in there. Do you have any allergies? And I might say, great. Simple enough. Go ahead and save it there. We'll go refresh this. I can already see that new question on there. So pretty quick there. But I will go ahead just to get to our next page, say I do not require accommodations, and I don't even have to answer that question. I didn't make it required. And let's hit next. And so this is very much that summary page. We have made it through the event form. I do want to note here, and I can try to say finish, right? This is a summary page. Now this would officially be submitting it. When you're in that preview mode, it's not going to let you finish. So it's not perfect for getting the entire user experience, but as you're building it out, I really like that option. All righty. With that, I think we're good to kind of conclude this website and registration piece, actually. And we can go ahead and move on to look at promotion and communication. So the first tab we're going to look at, again, just moving our way from left to right in this order that they've already set up for us. We can click on web links. So that's the one I said, it's got to be on for every single event. And so these are the links to your summary page, right? That first landing page we saw that you're going to embed within Marketing Cloud. When somebody clicks register, we want them going to this page. And so it is worth noting, and glad Cvent tells you this as well, it's pending status. These links will become functional once it's launched. And so I can see that by pasting this link in here. It's not currently open, which is nice. Nobody can register for it, but I can also just confirm that it's sending me to the right page or the right link. So that's nice. If you wanted to send people directly to a page, you could do that as well. Maybe they don't need to see the event website. You just want to send them to enter first name, last name, email. That's what the registration would do. Different options there. But we will go back up to promotions and communication. And let's actually click on, we're not going to do anything else under web. I want the second column being event emails. Promotion and communication, and then under email, event emails. And I'm actually going to go ahead and take us into this presentation real quick just to explain this a little bit. So let's take a step back. Thinking about you promoting your event from start to finish. So we've categorized this into 4 different spaces. So of course, that first one being your pre-event emails. So your invitation as well as your invitation reminder. And so then we have into step 2, once somebody actually starts registering for your event, there's post-registration emails that might be confirming they registered, maybe confirming if they modified their registration, as well as one or multiple know before you go messages. And in that 3 space, I think not used nearly as often, declined registration email. So registrants can either cancel after they registered, and you probably want to confirm that. Or if they just told you they cannot come to your event, you could send a regret. So you don't keep inviting them and saying, why aren't you coming? Why aren't you coming? Give them an opportunity to say no. And then once the event actually happens and you move into the post-event emails, you might be sending out either event feedback, just thanking people for your event. Even if you're not doing a survey, I think it's a really nice way to just close the loop. A lot of times people are asked to, they either share photos or they ask people who attended to share their photos. It's a good little opportunity there. And so emails in the first section, being pre-event emails, that either the initial invitation or the invitation reminder must go through Marketing Cloud. And this is very CU specific. They technically can go from Cvent. We absolutely do not do that. They must go from Marketing Cloud. And the reason is that ever so important can spam, federal law. So essentially when we send those emails out through Marketing Cloud, we have this footer on there that allows people to manage their email preferences. And this isn't built into Cvent. We don't really have a way of doing that. And so sending invites through there would be a violation. So all of those initial invites need to go out through Marketing Cloud. And that's because it's a commercial communication. You are promoting a product or a service by inviting people to your event. Where that shifts a little bit is once the person actually registers for your event. Oh, we don't need that page. So once they've actually registered for your event, you're no longer dealing with commercial communication. You're really dealing with a transactional message. And so I say, right, the transactional message, they've kind of opted into. And so by them registering for your event, you are allowed to email them about information for that particular event as you want. And you don't need to give them that opportunity to opt out. Really, can spam does not apply in this scenario. And so those are the reasons you're able to actually send your emails in the post-registration email section, either the declined registration email or the post-event email. All of those can actually go through Cvent. And so again, this is where I say Marketing Cloud's a lot easier to learn. You might be making one email, whereas in Cvent, you've now made an event website, you've made a registration process, and then you might have multiple emails to create, right? It's a lot more daunting than Marketing Cloud. Oh, let me get out of here. We'll look at that integration in a minute. All right. So on that event emails page, again, I'm in promotion and communication, and then that middle column, event emails. It's set up similarly how I just outlined email types, but more horizontal, I guess. So these pre-event emails, like I said, invitation reminder, they are not active. We do not send those from Cvent. So that's something we just kind of monitor and make sure they're going out of Marketing Cloud. But what we do send through here, right, are those post-registration emails, those declined registration emails. So I'll actually just go ahead and click into one of these, and I think I'm going to pick the registration confirmation, but you should be fine to pick any of these. Let's just go ahead and open that up. So the first tab that we're taken to is the details, right? Overarching stuff. So we can see the name that we just clicked on. But what subject line is going to come across for whoever registers for my event and gets this email? And so we've tried to keep it pretty simple for you. It reads registration confirmed dash whatever your event title is. And so this is what's called a data tag. So it's essentially going to look back to some of the basic event information you provided and just pre-populate it. So it's going to pull in whatever title you gave your event. Data tags are an incredibly powerful piece of Cvent when you're looking at making your events scalable and copying them multiple times. So we do have some of those built in already. And then otherwise, you can definitely control that from name, make it something a bit more friendly, right? Now, honestly, I should have done this in the template. I'm going to go back and fix that. This is how you can use data tags, right? Theoretically, I made Melanie Jones my event planner, so probably all my email should come from Melanie Jones. So the thing I like to do in here is kind of search for name. And I can find planner first name. And so that's automatically going to pull in whatever I populated in that field. I can say OK. And then maybe I want a space. I'm going to go back to my data tag, and then I can say last name. Yep, I want my planner, whoever that is, their last name put in there. And similarly, for that email address that we saw earlier, we'll definitely want that to be you or whoever that event planner is. So I will say save on that. All righty. So that first tab, pretty straightforward. But the second tab of the content, definitely where you'll spend more of your time. And so I know sometimes people look at these emails and they're much simpler than what we do in Marketing Cloud. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think once you cross the line of being an actual event or registrant, and the emails are much more transactional in nature and information based, I don't think it needs to be designed a lot. So it's not a bummer to me that you can't really design in here too much. I think simpler is better. And so when I say edit on that tab, you're going to be presented, again, with the same WYSIWYG editor that we saw earlier. And so for the most part, this should be fine. We really try to keep it super generic, right, with the overarching logo, but you could add your own department one in here, really looking at it as a template. But otherwise, the reason we're able to make it so generic is with all these data tags. So it's going to automatically pull in whatever planner first name, whatever email you put in, whatever phone number you put in. So all of this is being driven from the first page we started at, which, right, was event information. So really the power of that being that, say, right, your event's already launched, you're ready to go. Oh, you got a call that you need to change the date of the event. It's not like you need to go into 5 event forms and 5 website pages and do it in 10 places. So long as you use data tags, you can change it in one place and it'll just automatically happen everywhere else. So incredibly powerful. Use those as you can. This is a little bit hidden, and we'll show you this. If you want to replace this image, it's actually not in the Home tab. It's going to be in the Insert. But from there, you can access your media library. So, and you can create your own folder and keep everything in there. And I'll actually go ahead and create a folder now if you did not already do this. I will just go ahead and say New Folder. What we ask you to do is add your campus number. So mine is 08 because I'm at System. If you're at Boulder, you are at 01. If you are at Anschutz, you are at 02. If you are at Denver, you are 03. Colorado Springs is 04. And Advancement is 09. So that's how we're trying to keep things organized. But after that, you can really type out whatever you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and say University Relations. And I'm going to spell well. And we'll just add a little test here. And after that, I can create it. So let's go find it. Yep, we can already see that folder there. So you're welcome to do that. And then as you click into them, I'll pick a random one. You can see where they uploaded their particular images. I think also finding the data tags is a little difficult. So you should be pretty good with what we've put in here for you. But say you accidentally delete one, like this last name, how would I put it back? It is going to be in that insert tab. This hidden little tag here. I wish it was way bigger. Insert data tag. And that's going to get you back to the same search that we saw earlier. Last name. I want my planner's last name, add it in there. And there we go. And I can hit save. All righty. We do have about 15 minutes left. We are moving right along. All righty. So I will not go through invitee management right now, and really it's not even going to be populated, right? You can manage your invitees and registrants, but I haven't launched my event, so there's nothing there right now. And I'm also not heavily going to focus on the reporting area. What I do think is really important to note is that all of the things that your e-com specialist must do for you that you simply do not have access to. Oh, give me 1 second. So actually, and test users will make a little more sense in a little bit. So I'm going to walk you through right after this how to send a test so that you can actually test your event and other people in your department. But if that other person in your department isn't a Cvent user, we might need to add them as a test user. So we don't pay for these licenses, but you'll see in a minute how it'll just let them show up on a list so that you can send them a test. And so the report users, also, that is another type of user that we don't have to pay for their licenses. We've had a lot of folks who are more in that reporting space who have asked, oh, can I get a license? And then we find out all they're doing is exporting reports. So not the best use of a license cost. Instead, we can create you as a report user. We don't have to pay for it. And so long as somebody kind of parks your report somewhere, they can come in real time and access them however or whenever they want. And so they can avoid pestering you all the time. I spoke earlier about that finance information, and I know we're pretty well split in the group. Some of you will do paid events, others will do free, but that is something that your e-com specialist will need to get added so that money goes back to the right fee type at the end of the day. Your event planner email address, we looked at that as well. Right now, you very well might be populating that CU events do not reply, and we absolutely don't want events actually launching with that. We want them to be able to contact the event planner. So you'll need to get that updated or ask your e-com specialist to add it so it will be available for you to select. And this ever so important last component is event approval. So as e-com users, your events cannot be launched until they are approved by your e-com specialist. And so this is why they're so pertinent to everything within e-com. That if you don't know your specialist, you will soon. You'll be engaged in very many stages throughout the process. And so with their knowledge of your campus and what you're doing in particular, they'll be able to test your event, and they look at a magnitude of things from ensuring the finance information is set up correctly. When it is not, it is very difficult to fix and people are rightfully angry. So that's something we want to double check for you. And so I know some of the campuses are also looking at your branding, checking spelling, things like that. So I would ask your e-com specialist what they're looking at for you. And I know some people look at this as a barrier, but I'd really rather spin it as an opportunity to get another set of eyes. They are experts and exceptional at giving that advice. So use it as best you can. So knowing that that event approval must happen, how would you go about that? We have some built-in workflow within Cvent. So I'll go ahead and show you that, as well as how to test. So I'm actually going to go back to our overview screen. And so this current status in the top right is kind of trying to walk you through what, based off our pending status currently, it's suggesting what your next step would be. And so I do want to move to test mode. And I'm just going to go ahead and say confirm here. Confirm, we're going to move to test mode. And I think some people freak out at this moment, like, oh, I'm not sure my event's perfect. Can I really move it to test mode? There's nothing in test mode that you can't do anymore. You can absolutely still change everything while it's in test mode. You can also change a lot while it's live, but of course there's a lot more risk there and would not advise that until you are an expert. But for now, we're in that test mode. And so again, trying to walk us through the next step, let's say perform test. And so I'm actually going to train you on not what it's defaulted to, which is test the event myself. We're going to say email test scenarios to other people. And the reason I teach you this is because the way we're going to go, you're able to either test it to yourself or other people. So it's what I tend to just default to. But once you've said email test scenarios to other people, you can, one, determine who the sender is. It's going to automatically be you, but you can change that if you want. But then you're just going to add your recipients. Who do you want to test? And so the people who are displaying here are account users or truly licensed users. And so, of course, you all are on this list. I'll go ahead and find myself. But like I mentioned earlier, if it's just somebody in your department, they don't need to log in and do anything. They just need to test it. We can add them as a test user. So these are all the folks we've already added, but we are happy to add others as needed. I don't know how I managed that one. Okay, account user, Melanie. Got it. All right. And then you do need to determine a scenario. And so this is the other area that's going to be pretty particular to how e-com is using Cvent in partnership with Marketing Cloud. And so what we actually want to do is send people to our website via a web link. And that's because that's exactly how they're getting to, that's going to give you the closest experience to getting a Marketing Cloud email and clicking on that register button because we're using a web link. And so that other piece being, right, the most part you want to send to that summary page, the overarching details, but you could send somebody directly to the directions page or something like that. And then you will need to add a description here. The thought being, if you have multiple tests, maybe my fourth one is, okay, can you check on the third page in the second paragraph that this is correct? But for now, I'll just say test. You can say okay. So all that good. I got my recipients. I got my scenario. I can say start test. So once that comes through, and let me pull up my email. Yes, it came through very quickly. So I can see not the prettiest of tests, but that's going to let me get all the way through and actually finish the event. And I can even get that registration confirmation page back in my inbox. Sometimes I see people only test fractions of it, and you really need to go through every component that a customer or your registrant is going to see. A little trick here as well, if you haven't been able to add somebody as a test user, you could forward this along to other people in your office, and that link is going to work. So a little trick, but we're happy to add them as a test user. All righty. So once your event has been tested by you and others in your department and you think it's in good shape, you can actually send this to your e-com specialist and ask for approval. And so to do so, it is a little bit back at the beginning. It's going to be under your event details and then your event status. And so if you're on this screen right now, you might notice mine is looking a little different from yours. Where mine says approve events, again, because part of my role, I'm allowed to approve events. Yours probably says send for approval. And so go ahead and click on that and we'll see what options display. And so in order to get this workflow to work and actually trigger an email to your e-com specialist, you do want to notify others, right? Let's say yes. And so all of the e-com specialists with this role of approving events are listed out here. So you should know your e-com specialist. If you don't, of course, let me know. But I will go ahead and select myself here. And then you can put a message in this body. And so I know it's very helpful. We do tell you to give us 1 or 2 days in order to approve these event forms. And sometimes I know people get them done early and it can take a week, or on occasion, it has to be launched today. And so definitely put that in the body here so that your e-com specialist can put it in the queue properly. And then be approved by Monday. And so yeah, they should be good about responding and letting you know if that will be possible or not. Like I said, try to give them time. I'll say confirm. We'll see if that showed up in my inbox. And so this is what your e-com specialist is getting. That really allows them to see what event needs to go be approved. And then they kind of go through their checklist and make sure finances are set up correctly, your email's in there, things like that. So there's a chance they'll come back to you and say, okay, you're almost there. We need to fix these 2 or 3 things before you're actually ready to launch. All righty. We are nearing the end. I know some folks are dropping off. We do have those 5 minutes left, but with that, seeing how you can send that for approval, once your event is approved and you come back to this interface, this event status, you now have the opportunity to launch your event. And so I've sometimes seen people think that when the e-com specialist approves it, it's launched. And my view is that you might not necessarily want it live when I approve it. So I leave that task on you. But you can easily from there launch your event. And always, that's why the default set, do you want to delete all email data collected in test mode? And absolutely, otherwise I think it's mucking up your data. And so we'll just confirm. So one of the things I like to do is go actually look at one of these web links. I'll go ahead and copy it. Now let's paste it. And it is now live, right? Before it said this is not open. So everything's looking good there.